We've been harmonizing the gospel accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John here in the auditorium. We are currently studying the centurion's servant is healed. This is after the Sermon on the Mount has been preached. If you've been following along with the outline, it is on I believe this is the 4th page overall so far of the outline. You'll notice it's under letter G as you take a look at the new outline that was given out last week. By the way, is there anyone in here this morning that wants an outline, a copy of the outline for this particular study that did not get one? Okay. I appreciate that. Okay. Just keep your hands up. If we need to make more copies, we will. I only have a few copies left with me this morning. But please, if you want one, raise your hands, and Jim's going to help us out. So I think we're going to have to make some new ones there, Jim. I'm sorry. Okay. Brother Jim's going to make some more copies for those who need it. So if you'll keep your hand raised, he'll be able to have an account of how many Jerry's, one up here too. You might want to raise them high. I don't know if he can see you very well. So I want everyone to have one that needs one, that like one, that will be able to follow along in our study. So let's go to Matthew chapter 8 and make sure if we finished there last week. I'm not sure that we did. It was Matthew chapter 8 verse 1 and then Matthew chapter 8 verses 5 through 13. It had to do with the centurion's servant. So let's go back there to Matthew 8. One more time. We did this last week. What is a centurion? He is a Roman. Yes, he's a Roman. But he's a part of the Roman army, if you will. But why was he in particular called a centurion? That's right. He was the man that was over 100 troops. So therefore, he was responsible for that. He was a man in authority, if you will. Those of you who've been in the military and you went to your boot camp, if you will, or whatever, your basic training, I'm sure you had a drill sergeant. He let you know that your authority was no longer your daddy and your mama, it was him, right? And I'm just carrying on a little bit, but you understand what I mean by that. There are men in positions of authority that have to oversee and work with other people. Well, that's what this man was. He had to deal with the troops under his command. But under this situation of his command, there was one of his servants that was paralyzed, sick of the palsy, verse 6, we read that last week, grievously tormented. Now, as we are coming into more and more amazing things in our lives that the health industry is able to provide, and I did see something just the other day, as a matter of fact, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not publicly, but I saw on my phone that supposedly an experiment has been done where a paralyzed rat had some gel inserted into its spine and was able to walk again. And that is extremely promising. If that could be done to a human being, just imagine the blessing that would be to so many people. But nonetheless, back then you can imagine there was nothing that could heal him physically. It had to take a miracle, a supernatural occurrence. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. And I think it's about where we left off, maybe, I'm not sure. But we're going to pick up there today. It's Matthew 8, verse 7. I will come and heal him. Now, this centurion has obviously heard about Jesus. As he's gone out and he's been out in the society healing people, doing these different things, word has come back to this Roman centurion. Now, this is a Gentile, not a Jew. That a Gentile centurion has heard, yes, there is someone that can heal your servant. This tells me a lot about the centurion, too. He must have cared a great deal for this servant. Yes?
Is there any more needed? Amount of copies I'll need to make more.
Okay. Anyone else need a copy of the outline that did not receive one?
Sorry for it.
Anybody else? Did you get one? No, you don't need one? Anybody else? One? We need one up here. My apologies for not having enough, I guess, this morning. We ran out last week. We passed them out last week. We didn't run out last week. We ran out this morning. But he's going to take care of you, and I appreciate Jim doing that. The fact that a Roman centurion, a Gentile, is able to have this much faith in this man is amazing at this point in time. Because remember, the Romans are not usually God-fearing people in the sense of the Lord Jehovah. If anything, they had their emperors, they had their idols, but they certainly did not, most of them, believe in Jehovah God. This man, though, knows what he has heard has to be true. He is so confident that Jesus is able to do this that he comes to him. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. He comes to him begging, if you will, for help. Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus said unto him, I will come and heal him. Now, Jesus has the power to do this. We know that from all the things we've seen and heard already. But does he really have to go to the house to do this?
No.
Keep that in mind. No, he didn't. He didn't have to go. Could he not have spoken it right there and it would have happened? Later on, as a matter of fact, he does that very thing, and there is someone who is revived or healed because of that on his way back. But nonetheless, I will come and heal him. Why would he want to do this? Well, let's keep reading. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. Wow! I am amazed at this man's faith. You don't have to come, and by the way, I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. Just speak it, and I know it can be done. How many Jews had that amount of faith in Jesus at this point? Not nearly enough. And they were the people who had the Old Testament scrolls, who should have been looking for the Messiah coming, who should have known what he was going to be like when he appeared on the scene. And yet a Gentile, Roman centurion has more faith than most of Israel did at that point in time. It is amazing. He goes on, the centurion says, For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. That's the way it is in the Roman army. There's a man, if someone's over me, I'm over someone, but I don't feel worthy for you to come under my roof. When Jesus heard it, he marveled. Now, when you can make God in the flesh marvel, you've done something pretty amazing. Because nothing catches God off guard, does it? Did Jesus know already this man's faith? Yes, he did. He's God. He knows all. But he marvels when he hears this man saying these things. And he said to them that followed. Notice, he does not turn to the centurion and say this. He turns to the multitudes that followed him. Go back to verse 1. Great multitudes followed him, right? He turns to the multitude that followed him, and he said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. Our Lord rebukes the Jews for their lack of faith. They follow Jesus around. They listen to him preach. They see what he does. And yet here is a Gentile who by and large would probably reject the Jewish system of religion, and he has more faith than most of the Israelites did. This encourages me because this centurion, being a Gentile, was pleasing to God, and so can I be. I'm a Gentile more than likely, friends, if you trace my ancestry. My last name, Barnette, is of English descent. Anglo-Saxon, I guess, is the idea. Beyond that, I don't know. I know one way or the other we all came from 3 sons of Noah who got off the ark, but beyond that, I don't know much more. I don't usually consider myself to be a descendant necessarily that's a direct Jewish descendant, but I don't know what my lineage is. Most likely it's Gentile. So I'm grateful that a Gentile could be pleasing to God. Because what if the Gentiles were not able to be pleasing to God? We'd be in trouble. Here is a man, again, who has every reason not to believe, but he believes. The Jews had every reason to believe, and many of them did not believe. Amazing, isn't it? The Church of Christ today has many, many reasons to have faith in God and serve Him. Yes? Read the article in the bulletin today and see how that applies to what we're studying here in regard to our willingness to be a servant of Christ. How much faith do we really have? And I say unto you that many shall come, verse 11, from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Abraham was a patriarch. Have you ever heard the old, I've taught this before, I want to reteach it I guess this morning. I'm not trying to just rain on, look here, rain. I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade this morning, but I am trying to teach what's right. How many of you have ever heard the old children's song that they teach them sometimes, the 3 wandering Jews? You ever heard that? Once there were 3 wandering Jews. We've been teaching our kids a lie all along. I'm not kidding, we have. Abraham wasn't a Jew. Isaac wasn't a Jew. Jacob wasn't a Jew. They were patriarchs that were Hebrews. More accurately, that would be the way to do it. The Jewish name more than likely came from the idea of Judah, and then hence the Jewish or Jew, and really this predates that. So they're not really 3 wandering Jews. But why I bring this up, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the pillars when you think of the patriarchal fathers of the Israelite people. Is that true? Abraham was given the promise that through his seed, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Genesis 12, 1 through 3. That promise was passed to Isaac, his son, right? And then it was passed down to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. So there you have the 3 patriarchal pillars, if you will, of the Hebrew people, or the Israelite people. And he says that many are going to come from the east and west, and sit down with those three men in the kingdom of heaven. There's a lot there that may not seem like there is, but there's a lot there. Jesus will teach this, and we'll have to understand that when we get up there, we'll follow and talk about it then. God is a God of the living, not a God of the dead. Abraham still exists when Jesus teaches this on that day. By the way, he still does today. Abraham, physically speaking, does not exist on this earth today. Physically speaking, his life ended many, many, many years ago. But Abraham is still existing. We find that over in Luke chapter 16 explicitly taught. That when the rich man and Lazarus died, Lazarus went and was located where? In Abraham's bosom. And as a matter of fact, Abraham is mentioned as speaking to the rich man who was in torment. Abraham still exists. And he will exist somewhere forever. Thankfully, he is a follower of God. I believe that God obviously has made a promise to him, and I believe that the example of him being there in paradise, Abraham's bosom as it's referred to, he's going to be in heaven one day. And I believe that's the case here because Jesus already said that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be in the kingdom of heaven and that many would come from the east and west and sit down with them. But what does that mean from the east and west? I personally think what Jesus is teaching here is that Gentiles would come to be with these people as well. That not just Jews, not just Israelites, not just Hebrews, but many from the east and west, far beyond your borders, are going to come and sit down in the kingdom of heaven one day with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is something marvelous to me because that gives me hope that I can as well as a Gentile. That I can be one of the many from the east and west who one day will get to sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How many questions do you have? I tell you, there's going to be so much I'm grateful for what God has revealed to us because we have all that we need. But there are some things that are not told. Deuteronomy 29:29, the secret things belonging to the Lord our God. I'm looking forward to being able to talk to some of these people and get their first-hand accounts, of how things were. It's going to be amazing. So there we find the centurion's servant healed. Jesus uses this as an opportunity to teach Israel, you better have more faith because this man has more than you do. He was meaning that by large. He said, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. This man trusted him so much, had the evidence to support that from what he had seen and heard. He trusted him so much, he knew it would be done. How much faith do we have in God? Yes, sir.
He saw something, I believe, during some of the miracles that Jesus had done before that.
It's very possible he could have been a witness of that.
How can you not believe?
That's right. It's very possible that he could have seen that visually. If he did not see it visually, he no doubt had heard it. And that shows again, even if he did not see it, that shows even more so the amount of faith that he has, that the accounts were true and accurate. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you. All these years of singing that little song.
Well, I don't want to make everybody feel bad, well, I'm glad it helped. I just thought I'd point it out there that when we think about the actual verbiage there, the actual language that's used, it's actually not accurate when we think of it from that perspective. But they are the ancestors of the Jews. We know that to be the case. All right, anything on Matthew chapter 8, verse 1, and then verses 5 through 11. We got to go through 13. I didn't finish. I'm sorry. Let's read verses 12 and 13. But the children of the kingdom. Who are the children of the kingdom at this point in time? Who were the promised people of God under the old law? The Jews, the Israelites. Now, is the old law still in effect when Jesus is here teaching this? Yes, it is. So they are still the people of God, quote, unquote, right? But the children of the kingdom, those are the Jews, shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What is our Lord telling them? Some Gentiles are going to be saved, and some of you are going to be lost. That would have been something to a Jew that would not have settled well with some of them. There were some people who literally believed just because, and this was all that it would take, just because they were Abraham's seed physically, they were going to heaven. Go to Galatians chapter 3 in your spare time. Read there who really is Abraham's seed today. It is those who obey the gospel of Jesus Christ. The idea of being physically Abraham's seed did not guarantee anything if you weren't a faithful person. You still had to be faithful to God. These Jewish people, by and large, a lot of them had gone to tradition and away from the commandments of God. And if they didn't repent and they didn't change, they were going to be cast out into outer darkness. Hell, they were going to be lost. Hell is described as a place of outer darkness, a place where the worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched. That in and of itself is amazing to me. It's going to be a sense where the sensation is going to be like you're burning the whole time, but you never are truly going to be able to see much light because it's outer darkness. It's amazing. But nonetheless, the Jews were going to have to experience some of that. Now, if you're a Jew who's been following Jesus around in this multitude and he tells you this, what would be your reaction?
I need to change.
I would love to think that would be the case. Jim has a good heart. That's what we would like to see. The Jews thinking, you know what, he has a point. I need to look into things and I need to change things. A lot of them bowed up their backs and didn't do a thing. A lot of them, as a matter of fact, were offended, didn't like it. They were the same ones who later wanted him dead. So keep that in mind. Some of them were in that group. The one day they were following around, but later on some of them were chanting, "Crucify him, crucify him." There shall be weeping. What's weeping? Crying and gnashing of teeth. Why do I do it like that? Because that's about what it would be like. Have you ever been in so much pain you gritted your teeth? Then you understand what it means, gnashing of teeth. You're in such hurt, such pain, that you just, you grit and gnash, if you will. And Jesus said unto the centurion, now he turns away from the multitude. He told the multitude those things. He told the multitude that I found not so great faith, no, not in Israel. He made it clear that some would come from, many would come rather from the east and west and sit down with the patriarchal pillars. But some of those Jews, they were going to be cast out into outer darkness. And now he turns his attention back to the centurion. And Jesus said unto the centurion, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the self-same hour. The Lord still didn't go. That was what the centurion wanted. But that was not, Jesus actually said, I will come and heal him. But the centurion said, no, actually, I'm sorry, I got that back. The centurion, Jesus wanted to go, but the centurion didn't want him to. The centurion didn't feel worthy to have him come under his roof, remember? So Jesus does not actually go and do like he was planning to do. He, because of the faith and the way that this centurion behaved himself and demonstrated himself, Jesus just says, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. That's a true miracle, by the way, because look at the latter part. And his servant was healed in the self-same hour. Friends, there is still a problem today with palsy or a paralytic. That we cannot see this done today the way it was back then. This is a true miracle. There was no rest period. There was no doctors and nurses healing him because of their knowledge and medicine. This was a supernatural occurrence that was immediate. The self-same hour. I only wonder, I shouldn't say only, I do wonder what the servant said to the centurion when the centurion got home. I just wonder what he would have... I'm sure that he's probably let the servant know, I'm going to Jesus. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I just like to have the idea of what did he say when he came home, and all of a sudden he's up, able to jump around, walk, and I'm healed. I'd go on and tell everybody I could. I don't know about you, but I'd want to tell everybody I could. Now, any questions on Matthew 8:1 and 5 through 13? Yes, sir.
It's not revealed in Matthew about his servant, but in verse 7, Jesus says that it's a male servant. It doesn't say
Him. Right. That's true.
He knows that it's
Good point. Very good point. That shows the knowledge of God without having to have anything revealed to him. God knows all. Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. You're right. It doesn't say that his servant there was a male or female when he first mentions it in verse 6, but Jesus already knows he's a male. Very good.
It may be revealed in Luke 7.
Well, let's go over there. All right, let's read Luke chapter 7, verses 1 through 10.
1 through 10?
Yes.
Now when he concluded all of his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. And a certain centurion servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they had come to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving. For he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. When Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, and centurion sent friends to him, saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore I did not even think myself worthy to come to you, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I am also a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, turned around and said to his crowd, following him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not in even Israel. And those who were sent returned to the house, found the servant well, who had been sick.
All right, thank you very much for the reading. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't find it identified there either. So what Jerry was saying is exactly right. Jesus, this proves again his knowledge without having had those things revealed to him by knowing that this was a male servant. All right, let's see here.
Can I like
Yes.
in that number 9 it says, I say unto you, not even in Israel did I find so great a faith. Well, knowledge, he has knowledge, he understands what the teachings of Christ are at that point, that he's able to heal. And not everybody, they're just standing there with their mouths open.
And that's true.
This man understands, he's intellectually heard, digested what he has heard, and knows that it can happen.
I agree. That shows again why Jesus taught it so great faith. Again, I think that language is important. It's not just faith, it's so great faith. This man has the evidence and he believes it and he is going to have it. Now, Luke's account gives us a little bit more information than Matthew's does. But Matthew, as Jerry brought out, gave us information that it was a male servant that Jesus knew beforehand. We now know that Jesus, when he had gotten done, he went into the Sermon on the Mount. This was the idea. He went into Capernaum, we find there. Capernaum is an interesting study. If you go back and study the life of Jesus, you're going to find that Bethlehem was his birthplace. Nazareth was his childhood home. And even though he talks later on that the Son of Man had not where to lay his head, and that's true when he was in his earthly ministry, but he was around Capernaum a lot in his adulthood. And that may be more what a lot of folks think more of his adult city would be Capernaum. But nonetheless, and a certain centurion's servant who was dear unto him was sick and ready to die. Luke gives us a little bit more information there. Matthew let us know that he was sick of the palsy and grievously tormented, but Luke reveals through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit that this servant was about to die. If something didn't happen soon, he was going to die. And that gives us a little bit more reason why the centurion would have wanted this to happen so quickly. He's running out of time here. If he doesn't do something, the one that he cares for dearly is going to die. And when he heard of Jesus, there it is, the evidence out there, he's heard about they besought him instantly, saying that he was worthy. When he heard, verse 3, he sent unto him the elders of the Jews, beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant. Matthew doesn't reveal that to us. Luke's account reveals that at first the centurion uses the Jewish people to kind of go to Jesus first, which might not have been that awkward of a thing because, again, a lot of the Gentiles and the Jews might not have been very sociable sometimes, but this man was apparently. This centurion not only was a Roman soldier and a Gentile, but he obviously had feelings for the Jewish people too, because when the elders were being asked to go and do this or beg Jesus to do this, and when they came to Jesus, they besought him instantly, saying that that's the centurion, was worthy for whom he should do this. So the elders of the Jews go to Jesus and they basically say, this is a good man. He's wanting his servant healed. He's wanting you to come and heal him. But he's a good man, and they tell him more, verse 5, for he loveth our nation, and he hath built us a synagogue. Apparently, he was a decent fellow in a lot of ways. Even though he was not a Jew, he was kind to the Jewish people. Even so much that he built them a meeting place, a synagogue, for them to assemble. Then Jesus went with them. Again, that's the elders of the Jews. And when he was now not far from the house, he's still not there. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying unto him, Lord, trouble not thyself. This man does not... Have you ever been that way where someone was going to help you, but you didn't want to put somebody out? You ever known that? I've been there. Yes, I've been there. You don't feel like... You feel like somebody ought to be doing this for you, right? Well, that's the way he is here. He says, Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou shouldest enter under my roof. He just wants you, he trusts so much that Jesus has the power to do this. Just say it. I don't deserve to have you come in my house. Wherefore neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee. I don't feel comfortable with you coming. and I don't feel comfortable coming to you. But say in a word, and my servant shall, not could, shall be healed. That is confidence, that is faith. He had the evidence, and he believed. This is not wishy-washiness. He knew this could happen. For I also am a man set under authority, having under me soldiers. And I say unto one, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. When Jesus heard these things, here it comes, just like Matthew said, he marveled at him. Again, that's one of those things you just kind of stop for a moment. What can make God marvel? But this man's faith did. And turned him about and said unto the people that followed him, those were the multitudes, the Jews, he said, I say unto you, the Jews, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. If they're going to be the way they need to be, if they're going to end up going to heaven, they're going to have to do better than what they're doing. And they that were sent, returning to the house, found the servant whole that had been sick. That's a true miracle again. By the time they went to, and he's not far from the house, remember, he didn't go to the house, but he's not far from it here. By the time the servants get back there, the guy's already fine. Amazing. Any comments on this miraculous healing of the man sick of the palsy, centurion servant? And it's one of those situations, again, it wasn't a convalescent period. It was self-same hour. That's right, he had self-same hour. Immediately. Anything else? All right, let's move on. The resurrection of the widow's son in Nain of Galilee. I need a reader. Wayne, Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. We pick up right there where we left off.
And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And much people of the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And he came and touched the bough, and they that bare him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. And there came a fear on all, and they glorified God, saying that a great prophet is risen up among us, and that God hath visited his people. And this rumor of him went forth throughout all Judea, and throughout all the region round about.
All right, thank you very much. Another healing, another miracle. This time, he brings one back from the dead. Now, probably the most famous one that he brought back from the dead is Lazarus. I would say most folks probably remember that one more than they do some of the others. But in this case, this is another example that death does not have power over God. At the end of the day, God still has the power, he still has the ability, and that death is not something that is limiting God's power. Now, I find it also something that's interesting to me is these people had to die again. This is the exception to Hebrews 9:27 where it says, And it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. These are the exception to that. Lazarus was told very plainly, Lazarus come forth. He came forth. His body had been in there so long it already began to decompose and stink. But he came out alive. We find here the same thing, a resurrection, if you will, of a life, but that person had to die again. Sometimes people wonder, well, does Lazarus remember what it was like on the other side? Does this person remember what it was like on the other side? We don't have any record of that. I do know that Paul talked about a man who had been called up to the third heaven who heard things which he could not utter. So maybe they're not allowed to. Maybe there are things they can't say when they come back. They're not allowed to do it, whatever the case may be. Whether it's memory no longer there of it or whatever it is. But Paul did mention that on occasion. So it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now, the disciples here are a reference primarily to the ones we probably refer to as the apostles at this time, some of them. But a disciple is just that, a follower or learner, someone who learns and follows someone. But the disciples went with him, and much people. I would love to tell you that that's going to continue to be the case, that much people or many people are going to be around our Lord. Eventually, they're going to be happy because they get their bellies full, and then eventually they're going to stop following him. It will end eventually. But right now, they're seeing and hearing all this amazing teaching and all of these amazing acts of miraculous nature, and they want to be around him. Now, when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Back then, cities had walls and gates, primarily. It was a very common thing for these cities to be this way. Obviously, the wall was for defense. It allowed animals to stay out that could come in at night sometimes and cause problems. It allowed attacking armies to hopefully stay out and not cause problems. It gave a sense of security. But there has to be a way in, right? Unless you want to climb over the wall every time. So there is a gate to the city, an entryway. And this is primarily where a lot of business was always conducted by the men of that city. If you remember years ago, and it's not that way as much as it is now, in a lot of rural areas, where did men go to sit around and talk about things? Where I grew up, they went up to the courthouse. And they sat around the courthouse whittling. You know what whittling is? Okay. They'd sit around whittling, and that's where they talked about a lot of things. There probably wasn't much of anything to talk about. But a lot of them would get there, and that's where they would sit around and talk about things. Well, I kind of get that imagery almost in my head. This is where the men gathered together, and this is where a lot of business was done. And on this occasion, the business that is at hand is a funeral procession. There's no doubt about this. The Bible records to us by inspiration that this was a dead man. The reason I say that is because there are some people who would try to undermine the miracles that Jesus did and try to say, oh, he really wasn't dead. He was just maybe appeared dead. He passed out. They didn't have stethoscopes back then. They didn't have heart monitors back then. It just looked like he was dead. No, he was dead. Very plainly put. And he's been dead long enough now that they are going through the process of carrying him out, if you will, the only son of his mother. Sometimes the cemetery or the place that they would put some people, or the tombs or sepulchres, were outside the city, not necessarily inside the gate. So they're taking the body out. This is the only son of his mother. I'm not wanting anybody to feel uncomfortable with this, but if you don't have any children and wanted children, that can be a terrible thing. I have known some people like that wanted to have children but were unable, and it is sad because they have a lot of love in their hearts. If you're blessed with one child, you're blessed tremendously. A lot of folks have multiple children, don't they? When you have a single child and that's all that you have, obviously it's going to be extremely special to you. This is the only son that she has. And she has no prospect of any more because right now she's a widow. And much people of the city was with her. Again, funeral procession. They're taking the body out of the city. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said unto her, weep not. Do you remember our Lord weeping? He did. Jesus cried. Matter of fact, it wasn't just a one-time thing, but in particular, one of the occasions was where? I just mentioned it earlier. Where was it? At the tomb of Lazarus. Jesus wept. There is a lot of speculation, and that's all that it is. There is not a single one of us who can definitively say exactly what the crying was for on that and be absolutely positive about it. One of the guesses is that he was overcome with emotion because he loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus so much. That's possible. And he saw Mary and Martha suffering so much. It could also be, some have suggested, that Jesus wept because he knew he was taking Lazarus out of paradise and bringing him back into a world of sin. That's possible. I don't know. But on this occasion, he sees someone else weeping. And he had compassion on her. Friends, one of the things we need to be able to have in our lives is compassion on our fellow man. And not just those who are our family, friends, and even just Christians. We need to have compassion on everyone. Every single person is going to have something in his or her life along the way that's going to be hurtful if they live long enough. Painful if they live long enough. This woman is in a state where she feels very much left alone in this world. One of the greatest fears that people have is to be left alone. That is, think about it. From the very beginning, God made Adam, did He not? But He also, after He made Adam, said it is not good that the man should be alone. God understands that. She is going to be pretty much alone now. The Lord saw her, He had compassion on her, and said unto her, weep not. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think this woman was this type of lady, but let's just say that our Lord comes up to her, He's meaning well with this. He tells her, weep not. What if she had looked up at Him and said, what do you think? Who do you think you are telling me not to weep? My son died. There would be some people who might do that. I have every right to cry. Don't tell me not to weep. But we don't find that reaction from her. I really don't know the reaction that she fully had because we're not told it. But we do know what Jesus did, and it didn't take Him long. And when He came and touched the bier, and they that bare Him touched the bier, and they that bare Him stood still, and He said, young man, I say unto thee, arise. Now the corpse is there. They're carrying it out of the city. Jesus just happens to be there at that moment to see this woman. He tells her, weep not. He goes and He says now, He does not speak to the mama. He does not speak to the multitudes. He does not speak to the people carrying the body. He said, young man, I say unto thee, arise. At Lazarus' tomb, He said, Lazarus, come forth. Jesus is very specific on both occasions. You might have heard somebody one time say that Jesus, I've heard this, I don't know who's original to, but at the tomb of Lazarus, Jesus had to be specific and call out Lazarus' name because if He just said, come forth, everybody would have come out of the graves. He had to be specific. Lazarus, come forth. He says to this young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up and began to speak. And He, Jesus, delivered him, the young man, to his mother. I learn a lot about my Lord on occasions like this. He really genuinely cared. Friends, there are some folks, let's just be honest, you can almost tell sometimes they don't really care. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to judge every single person's situation, but let's just be honest. From the evidence sometimes we see, and we have to be careful because we judge not according to appearance, but sometimes we can kind of get that feeling, we can kind of get that impression they don't really care. They may say they care, they may be, but they don't really, 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 really care. Jesus did. This woman was hurting, and He was going to do something about it. Yes, sir?
The compassion that Jesus shows here, and when He weeps, gives me a lot of hope, because when I pray and I'm hurting, I know I get compassion from God.
He cares. He knows you're hurting. He knows you're. And by the way, while I'm here, let me go and throw this out there before we quit today. If Jesus wept, is it wrong for men to cry?
No.
I wish that had never started. I don't know who started it, but I wish it would have never started. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe men ought to be masculine. I don't believe men ought to be feminine. But at the end of the day, it is not wrong for a man to cry. Jesus is the example of the perfect man, and He cried. That's a God-given emotion just like joy and happiness. And we are able to express it, and rightfully so. We ought to be able to express when we're hurting how much we hurt. Those men sometimes, or women, who are, the case may be, who hold things in like that and don't let it out, do more damage to themselves sometimes mentally than if they just did. Sometimes we need that release. All right, we have to stop today. I don't like having to stop right there. We're not completely done, but we're close. We'll pick back up there at verse 15 next week.